So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Wish Alliance Cosmic Conversations. I'm your host, Sheila Seppi, and tonight we are pleased to have Barbara Lamb as our guest speaker. But before I introduce her, I'd like to acknowledge my co host for the evening, Phil Gruber. So, Phil is out there. Thank you so much for assisting. And you really are
good
in
evening, everyone, and
for a
welcome to the
treat
Wish
tonight.
Alliance Cosmic Conversations.
I think
I'm
we're
your
getting
host,
a little
Sheila Seppi,
feedback,
and
so
tonight
hold on
we are
just a
pleased to
moment.
have Barbara Lamb as our guest speaker. But before I introduce her, I'd like to acknowledge my co-host for the evening, Phil Gruber. So Phil is out there. Thank you so much for assisting. And you really are good evening, everyone, and
for a
welcome to the
treat
Wish
tonight.
Alliance Cosmic
There we go. So they'll just get to hear us over and over again. So anyway, you're in for a real treat tonight because as Barbara being here with us is going to share her vast experience over, I don't know how many years she's going to share with us. And she has 8 different topics that she's going to be speaking about. And so I want to say that Barbara is a psychotherapist, a hypnotherapist, a regression therapist, works with crop circles, is the author of several books, and the list really goes on and on. I think Barbara has more lifetime achievements than anyone that I ever know. And I want to give another shout out and a thank you to Barbara because honestly, if it were not for Barbara, we may not even be having this meeting tonight. Because I had, if you'll remember, when I was recovering from a freak illness and we were talking on the phone, you said, well, this may just be the perfect opportunity for you to get started on your book. And I did. And as an offshoot of that, then we had the walk-in conference. And as an offshoot of that, we ended up with the Wish Alliance. And so Barbara has kind of been with me every step of the way as we have been developing and expanding. And she's part of our Wish Alliance as an luminary. And I am so grateful to have her here tonight. And Barbara, without any further ado, I'll just turn it over to you.
Thank you. Well, I just have to say I'm so delighted to see Jacqueline Smith, as well as the rest of you. And she has been very important in my life and my development and my delight. First of all, Sheila did give a nice introduction. And before we go further, I want to um, acknowledge and promote the hybrid conference coming up, um, guided by Sheila, created by Sheila, and guided by Sheila. And that's going to be July 24th and 25th, a Saturday and Sunday. And that's going to be on Zoom as well, right? So that anybody, anywhere can tune in. And I am incredibly grateful personally for Zoom because it just facilitates so much communicating and sharing and learning. And just as we are right now. I mean, it's great that we didn't have to all go to Colorado, as wonderful as Colorado is, but to have this experience today. So I do really encourage everybody, whether you're a hybrid or not, to go to the hybrid conference July 24th and 25th. Uh, There'll be some excellent speakers there. It will be very dynamic and I'm sure a great learning opportunity as well as delightful for all. So, a little bit about myself. I grew up on the East Coast and a pretty traditional, I would say, traditional way of growing up and going through school and going through all the childhood and teenage experiences. And then I went to a very traditional Ivy League women's college and got this wonderful, wonderful traditional education with excellent people and excellent professors, and became a philosophy major because ever since I had been a young child, I kept thinking there's more there's more to this than what I see. In other words, I didn't know the words for it then, but I was thinking there's more to this physical reality. There's got to be, there's something behind this. That's what I kept thinking. Now, if I mentioned that to anybody, they had no idea what I was talking about. So, so I grew up, kind of keeping a lot of those thoughts to myself. And what is really real? And then when I was in college and took my first philosophy course and hit Plato, I didn't hit him, but came upon his work. Um, I was thrilled. I actually sat in class and cried and sobbed when he was talking, when we learned about his talking about how we people, all live in the shadows of the cave in terms of reality. And that for the rare person, they could look way up and see a little hole of light in the shadow of the cave. And that little hole showing light out of the cave, that was what was metaphysically real. Well, somehow that absolutely touched my heart and my soul. That's why I cried out of relief. Like, oh God, finally somebody understands. And not only somebody, but an illustrious person, Plato, whom I respected tremendously. So anyway, that was good. That was a little confirmation to me that there is more than what we normally think of as reality. That's kind of the theme of this talk that I'm giving, different segments of my life in which I feel like I had the wonderful blessing of expanding into other aspects, other energies, other viewpoints, other realities to what we call reality. So anyway, I had quite a few years of adult life and children, 3 children in the East Coast. And then because of my husband's work, we moved to California in 1967. And I knew as we were getting ready to move to California, and by the way, we were the only people in our whole families who had ever left the East Coast. And then to go to California, which is considered the wild outer fringe of nowhere from that point of view, from the Boston and Connecticut point of view. But I knew somehow that by going to California, that meant that I was going to develop in ways that I didn't even imagine. I couldn't even imagine they existed, but I just knew that this was going to be a big growth area for me. And indeed, it certainly has been, still is, all these years later. So in 1968, I discovered at a weekend workshop, discovered by myself during the lunch break, that there was such a thing as moving to music. In other words, I was left in the big conference room as everybody else went to lunch, and I saw a Victrola there. Remember Victrolas? Even before phonographs. and and there was a record there. So I put it on the phonograph and it was wonderful music. I don't remember what it was. But here was this big room with a wooden floor and daylight coming in. And I was all by myself. So I was unself-conscious. And I started to move with that music. And I was so inspired by what that did for me to move unself-consciously to that music, that when I came back from that weekend retreat, I thought, oh my gosh, I've got to do more of that. So I found records and put them on another but Victrola. Maybe we were into phonographs by that time, and started moving to music in my own home. And very, very quickly, I mentioned this to a friend, and she said, "You're so inspired about this. You really ought to be teaching classes." And she found a place for me to teach a class. And I said, "Well, okay. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll do it." And so I started teaching movement classes. This was 1968. And then I began to be aware that there were a couple of other movement classes in my town of Claremont, California. And oh, I was just terrifically drawn. And by the way, I've had this happen a few times that when I was interested in a new subject like this, one day the telephone would ring. It happened truly like this. There was a woman who was calling me, a woman I had never heard of before and never heard of since. But it was kind of like a voice out of the universe, or maybe guided by my guides, whom I didn't even know about at that time. So this woman was telling me that there was a dance therapist who was going to be coming to my town, Claremont, to the Claremont colleges, and teach a course in dance therapy, which I had never heard of at all. I didn't know there was movement therapy or dance therapy. That had just not come across my awareness. So when she said that, I felt like a burst of light in me. Where is it? I'm going to go to it. And did. And took actually 2 or 3 years of classes with that particular dance therapist, a wonderful little troll like sort of woman from Switzerland, Trudy Shoup, a marvelous, marvelous person. And that helped me to legitimize what I was doing. My style of conducting dance therapy was very different than hers, but through her, I learned that there was such a thing as a national professional group called the American Dance Therapy Association. Wow, there were other people doing this too, and even as professions. I didn't know that. So, of course, I looked up the American Dance Therapy Association and joined it and went to their workshops for many years and eventually became one of their workshop teachers. But of course, at the beginning, I didn't know all that was going to happen. So anyway, in my weekly classes that I had in my own town and then eventually to neighboring towns, we were exploring so much in movement. It wasn't dance in the sense of teaching dance routines or steps or anything. It was spontaneous movement with music on. The idea in my early days of that were that it would be a wonderful outlet for a person's emotions. It would help people to get in touch with their emotions and embrace the really positive ones that they liked and express and discharge the ones that were problematical, like resentments and angers and jealousies and some of those really negative emotions. So, in these classes, which I carried on for at least 12 years, probably more like 14 years, um, the my students, who were usually mothers of young children who were at school, we always met during school hours elsewhere, and it was very, very therapeutic. We also had um, a rest period after an hour or so of vigorous movement. And then I would guide them in a meditation, which I'd make up right on the spot. And during those meditations, I found, and my students found, that we were really, really expanding in consciousness. it was a spiritual experience, although I wasn't thinking of it as a spiritual experience, but I think it really was. Certainly was a consciousness expanding experience. And then I would have us get up and spontaneously express on big sheets of paper, big, like plain newsprint paper, um, whatever was going on with us uh, inside was very much a personal expression. So I said, don't draw a picture of anything, just with the color, with these oil cray paste colors, just express what's going on. If it's a conflict, if it's a feeling of wonder, if it's anger stuff that you still need to get out, express it. And then we would sit in a little group on the floor, like a little informal group therapy, and discuss what we had been expressing, so that helped people to get much more in touch with their own process. So during those experiences in the dance classes, we um, often, I would see auras. I'd see auras around the head and the shoulders, and sometimes I would even see it around the entire body. And sometimes I would mention that, like, oh, Mary, your aura is so green today. So they became very interested in seeing auras for the first time. And I would teach them how to see auras. And whenever they could see them, that was really exciting. And we all celebrated it when each one gradually learned. And so we began to realize that we are really energy systems, that each one of us individually is so much more large, so much more huge than we had ever thought of ourselves as being. So again, expansion of awareness, expansion of consciousness, really. And yet I didn't have that framework to think in those particular terms. And we did experiences with what I call energy exchanges, through the movement, sending energy to another person and receiving energy from another person. And that in and out, that sending and receiving, was very, very inspirational and very wonderful. And even after a lot of these transcendent states that we would get into because of the movement and the energy work, it culminated one time after I had had a class with these particular people. Usually there'd be about 10 or 12 people in these classes. And after a few weeks of working with this one particular group, I put on the music on the phonograph of George Harrison's song, My Sweet Lord. I don't know if any of you know that. Jacqueline's nodding. Um, and I somehow deeply, deeply loved that particular song. And we started moving and swaying. And that particular piece goes on for an unusually long time. Thank goodness, because in our all swaying individually, we gradually came together and we swayed with our bodies touching each other, like we were really all in a very altered state. And we experienced merging as one. It was such a glorious experience that I don't think any of us participating in it will ever forget it. And now I'm taking a big leap from those years in the 1970s to 2015, knowing Jacqueline Smith and the other ET human hybrids. And every one of them said that they learned from their extraterrestrial beings, guides, mentors, that that means we in the whole of creation, the whole universe, we are all one. And when the first one of you, Jacqueline, said that, I knew it because I had experienced it with this group of people many years earlier. I mean, how wonderful to get the validation of that. So anyway, those movement classes were really, really important. I think they were great. I still, if I would see some of those people, would get really good feedback from them, I'm sure, because I did for many years. And then because of the little classes, somehow other people who were giving conferences in our town, they would invite me to open the conference with movement of the people who came to the conference. Now, these were people in business suits and ladies with high heels and all that stuff, you know. And but still, I'd have them take off their high heels, and I'd get the whole group, like maybe 300 people or whatever was at the conference, and get them moving and swaying and moving around the room and sending energy to each other and receiving energy so that the whole group felt like one. And then I did that with weekend workshops that my husband and I led during the all through the 1970s and into the early 80s. And with each one of those, I would open the whole weekend retreat with movement of the whole group, which might be 150 people or 200. And again, everybody would say, wow, I just feel so expanded in consciousness. So that was really exciting work. And that by about 1981 or 82 sort of morphed into my Tai Chi work. So I had begun to learn Tai Chi in the late 1970s. And then by about 1981, people were saying, Barbara, you should really be teaching this. You know, you have such a feeling for it, an expanded awareness of what this is. And so I started teaching classes locally and doing workshops too in Tai Chi. And there again, it was such an expanding experience because we were working in movement with the earth energies, bringing up the energy from the earth, bringing it through the very center of us up into the universe, opening to the universe and bringing down the energy of the universe through us. So I had this real strong sense of mixing the heaven and the earth in us, kind of like we were the fulcrum points for energy. And that with all of this, there was everybody who worked with me on this in the classes, we all figured it was a tremendous expansion of reality and appreciativeness of the whole earth, universe, everything. And so that was incredible. And we would get into altered states of being during the Tai Chi when we'd really get into it and be doing it for an hour or so. And one time we were doing Tai Chi in the room, sort of the recreation room of a church in Claremont, California. It had great big sliding doors looking out toward the mountains in back of our town. And so we were doing Tai Chi for probably an hour. I think there was music on in the background, again, phonograph music. And I was very, very involved in feeling extremely expanded myself. And the next thing I knew, I was out of that room, out of body, having an out of body experience up around the mountains and the fields between the mountains and this building where we were, and swooping around, feeling like I was dancing in the universe with my astral body. And then I came back close to the building, looked through the big glass doors, and I could see my body still in the room doing the Tai Chi movement, even though I, the awareness I, the real I, was outside of the room and out of my body. So I just went through the glass doors and back into my body, carried right on, thinking, wow, that was really a glorious, expanding experience. Now, you see, each step, each phase, I guess you'd call it, of my life, the dance therapy, the movement therapy, and then the Tai Chi movement work, each one sort of morphed as I was growing and developing. So the Tai Chi phase morphed into my taking training in past life regression therapy, which I did for 5 years. And that was all stimulated by having had 5, or actually 7, very, very vivid, spontaneous past life recalls when I was visiting Egypt 2 times and then visiting Peru 1 time. And I began to think, wow, these are so vivid, these recollections, these memories that would come up in certain places where I apparently had been, I thought, in previous lifetimes. Although up to that point, I hadn't thought there was any credence to reincarnation. But here were these experiences coming up spontaneously, which I really had to pay attention to. Anyway, I found out that there was such a thing as the Association for Past Life Research and Therapies, and went for 5 years of training, did a lot of past life regression work. And that is just very expanding of who we are, very, very confirming that we are ongoing, continuing souls. That's what we basically are. And that we do come into a lot of different lifetimes, one by one, and have experiences here. So many of the regressions that I was doing and had done on me by my colleagues under supervision took us to other parts of the world, to having been other races, other genders, other cultures, certainly. And all of us who were being trained in this work were finding out that we had been many, many different places in the world. So it's interesting that when we think of our family lineage now, and we think like, suppose your name is Johnson, realize that, and many people would follow the Johnson genealogy back as far as they could in history. Many of us do that, and one of my uncles did that for the family that I was born to. But when you think about reincarnation, and you think that one lifetime you might have been a very black-skinned man in Africa, like I was, another one you might have been a North woodsman in northern Canada, male, as I was. Another one, a young fair-skinned woman in England. Another one, a more yellowy skinned person in China and India and all these different parts of the world, in Peru, dark-skinned, black-haired person in Peru. So I was thinking about this morning. How does that fit into the genealogy that many, many people trace from their family that they're born into in this life? So I think that's kind of a very interesting thing. There's sort of a divergence there that we probably have been incarnated into many different kinds of family lines, cultural lines, and so forth. But anyway, but some people really focus on the one that they're in now, and that's okay. So anyway, in the regression work, it turned out sometimes before I even knew about it, and this was in the 1980s, that three different clients in their regressions to a past life realized that they were a different kind of being, what we would call an extraterrestrial being. And the regressions were either of that being living on quite a different kind of planet or having come to this planet from their different kind of planet. And so that was extremely interesting that some of us had, to me, that some of us had experience being these other kinds of beings. And sometimes people were finding that they came from other realms, other dimensions, like usually a more spiritual realm, non physical, that they had come from that into some sort of experience in what we consider a past life. But they come into some sort of experience here on the earth. And yet, when they did that, the other people living on earth were not aware of them because they were non corporeal, but they were very alive beings, very conscious beings. So, anyway, that work certainly was very enlarging and expansing for those of us involved in it, those of us who have been very blessed, I think, to conduct this. So I've been conducting regression work since 1984. It's a lot of people, and the people who get regressed, of course, have had a tremendous expansion of who they really are when they visit themselves, the same soul, in a totally different lifetime, and particularly if it's a different gender or culture, etc. So that has been really interesting work. And then, of course, that morphed into people coming to me who wanted to have regressions to extraterrestrial experiences. And so that has led into a tremendous expansion of my work from my point of view, and tremendous expansion for anybody who has regressed to experiences with extraterrestrial beings that they have had. And there's been so very much learning. And I happen to be the kind of person that when I am learning something new that is really, really interesting and exciting to me, I just love to share it with somebody. So sometimes I've had opportunities to share with maybe one or two persons. But to my great surprise, because I have been interested in these things and working with them, there have been various conference groups that even back in about 1991 or 1992 started asking me to come and give talks about the extraterrestrials that I was learning more and more about from my clients. Also, um, since then, there have been many groups and conferences that have asked me to share different aspects of the extraterrestrial phenomenon. And I love that. I think that is just such a fascinating thing to share. It certainly has been fascinating for me to experience. Well, also in the early 1990s, in fact, in 1990 itself, I became aware for the first time of the crop circle phenomenon, particularly as it was happening in England, although it is a worldwide phenomenon. So, what happened is that I went to a whole life expo in Los Angeles, where they have lots of speakers about lots of different subjects. And I noticed in the program guide that instead of the photo of the speaker next to a description of one of the lectures coming up, there was a photo of a funny little design. I didn't understand what it was. I thought, what's that? And the title of that lecture was something like Mysterious Patterns in the Fields of Britain. And immediately I had that big burst of light inside myself and said, oh, that means we're being communicated with by those out there. Now, up to that point, I didn't really think they were extraterrestrials, but suddenly it was like a moment of truth. There are others out there and they're communicating with us through these crop circles. So I went to that lecture, and halfway through, I found myself slapping my own thigh and saying to myself, okay, that's it. I'm going to England to check that out next summer, which I did. That was 1991. And I went from 1991 through 1916, and until I moved and just got too busy to go again. And anyway, I went for 27 years, and to England every summer for crop circles. And every time I would be in a real crop circle, a genuine one, in other words, made by the unknown, the mysterious force, I would feel a whole different feeling, because there really is a different energy in those crop circles. And that energy we know is there. It can be measured by various means like electrostatic voltmeters and magnetometers and microwave detectors and dowsing rods, which I used, and pendulums, which many people use too. And so going into a crop circle is a very enlarging, expanding experience. And of course, here you are in a crop circle in the middle of a great big open field with a horizon to horizon of unbroken sky, just experiencing the expansion of space and then the energy of the crop circle. And I think the consciousness that was given in the making of the crop circle by the sorts which I consider out there in the universe, it really is a moving experience, which many, many people have expressed. And I love to express. I loved going into every single one of them. So after a very few years, I started taking groups of people to visit crop circles. I'd meet them at Heathrow Airport in a couple of vans. We drive on the left side of the road and through all the country lanes and roads and find the fields where there were new crop circles and go into them. And every one of those people expressed, wow, I just feel so enlarged. I feel so universal because of these experiences. And indeed, I think that that is one of the functions of the crop circles, is to enlarge our whole speculation, our whole point of view, to thinking that, wow, maybe these are not done by Earth people or Earth forces. Maybe they really are done by something more cosmic, which is obviously very highly intelligent and highly artistic. So the crop circle work, I think, has been really, really important. Um, the energies, the figuring out the communication of messages from whatever that intelligence is, which I think is extraterrestrial. Um, so it goes on, and the phenomenon is still going on too. I'm very happy to say. And even though England has been the concentration of crop circles and probably the most complex and beautiful crop circles, it is nevertheless a worldwide phenomenon. So you get crop circles in rice paddies in Indonesia and China and some of those countries, Japan, and you get them in all kinds of crops depending on which country they're in and which crops that they happen to grow there. So anyway, that is very expanding. Now, I would also like to say, this has nothing to do with my work, but with my personal life, that I have been a lifelong skier, snow skier. And I got to be a skier at about age 5 or 6, very clumsily, of course. But I, over the years, developed into a very good skier and experienced a tremendous amount of grace and flow through my skiing. And at quite a young age, I think by my teenage years, I would experience when skiing, and especially when really doing it with grace and flow, that I was feeling hugely expanded in consciousness. And very often I would have the thought when really skiing at my best that I was gliding through the universe. It was a very, very enlarging, expansive experience for me. And it had, I realized after a long time, it had a commonality with Tai Chi, which I had never expected, but it did, in the sense that in skiing, when you're about to go into a turn, and of course you're going downhill, that you increase the weight of your body on the land, on the snow, and then you rise up in the turn and then back to the earth and then rise up in another turn back down to the grounded earth. Oh, I lost the picture on Zoom. I bumped into something by mistake. Well, I'll just keep talking. Hopefully it's okay. So
Yes, you're okay. If you
okay.
will, you can minimize your current screen and you're probably behind that if you want to see yourself.
Okay,
or
do I
see.
push the little straight line up at the top?
Correct. It's typically yellow.
Ah, there we go. Yay. Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. Suddenly there was the big Zoom name and I was gone. Okay, so this skiing itself was a huge expansion of perspective and experience. Like I would be gliding through the universe, and then it would morph into I am the universe. And I don't mean that in a megalomaniac way, but it's just that if we expand our consciousness enough, what we can be aware of is being the totality, being the universe. And I will add, we are all dimensions too. Although right now we are in the physical form, the big us is in the physical form, living as human beings. And we are so much more than that. So much more than that. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the work that I have done, regressions with people who have had extraterrestrial encounters, because that has been tremendously informative and expanding for me and for the people who have participated in that with me. So a person very typically who has these ET experiences, a person may remember a very few moments of the beginning of an encounter with an extraterrestrial. And very typically, they'll be in bed at night and they'll just remember that suddenly they're aware of extra light coming in the room, or sparkles of light, or orbs of light flying around, or they'll wake up to see that there already are beings there who are not human beings by any means. They are really different than we are. And the person might be aware of suddenly not being able to move or not being able to call out. And they might be aware of being floated up out of their bed and across the room and through the wall with these beings and up through a beam of light and then into something else, which turns out to be a spacecraft. But usually they're not aware of all of that sequence, just the first few moments of it. But in the regression, it is such a wonderful thing, in my opinion, that people can be regressed to the little tiny bit they remember about that experience and may have wondered about for a long time and may want to know more about, like what else happened besides what I remember. It's such a wonderful thing that the subconscious part of the mind records everything that we experience, even it records the things that happen to us that we have not been consciously aware of. So that's why we can do the regressions in the state of hypnosis. In other words, deep relaxation. We invite the subconscious part of the mind to give us the details of that particular experience. And it does. The person has the sense in regressing of reliving that experience from the first moments right through the whole experience until they are returned again. So in this work, I've done well over 4,000 regressions to people's extraterrestrial experiences. So every one of those experiences has been enlarging of my awareness, my consciousness, and certainly enlarging of the person's awareness and consciousness. And then because I've been invited to share at many, many different conferences and interviews and so forth, that means that many more people have been able to get that wonderful expansion of perspective by hearing about other people's extraterrestrial experiences. And then I've had, turns out, as an adult, I have had 4 encounters myself, which I never expected to have. I kept thinking, well, I'm not an experiencer, but at least fortunately I can help others who are. So I think that seems to be very helpful work and definitely expanding of our understanding of reality. And more is coming to us, not only the regression work, but the whole question about disclosure of the mysterious object in the sky, that our government has been involved in lately. That is definitely um, an opening, anyway, an opening of expanding for many, many other people in the earth. So I think that that is really wonderful. So in this work, it has been very apparent that there are many, many different species. Some people claim, like Craig Campobasso in his ET Almanac Species, he claims that there are 89 different extraterrestrial species that interact with people on Earth. And there's another woman, I don't personally know her, Elena Danan, and she says, I think her figure for the number of extraterrestrials who visit Earth numbers in the early 90s like 92 or 93 different extraterrestrial species. And as time goes on, we learn more and more about this. So I think that that is a wonderful expanding of our consciousness. And particularly when some of the extraterrestrial beings are very, very benevolent. They're very, very caring about Earth. They're very caring about humanity. They want to be a help to humanity. There is a universal principle that they cannot come and fix everything for us. They cannot come and undo all the negative things that we have going, but they can certainly inspire us to do that. And that's what a lot of them are trying to do, to help us, to give us suggestions, give us inspiration, give us impetus for saving this species that we are, and which the many of the other species really respect, and by all means save our precious planet Earth. One of the extraterrestrial beings used to channel through a client I worked with for about 11 years, many, many sessions of regressions we had, and many channeling sessions she did right there in my office. And he pointed out one time that Earth is considered very special, very precious by many of the other civilizations on other planets. And one of the reasons for that is that we on Earth have more species of life and subspecies and subspecies to than all of the other planets that have life combined. So I want to say that again. On Earth, we have more species than all of the other planets have life combined. A lot of the planets don't have life. A lot of them do have life, but they add all of those up together. They don't have as many species of life as we have. So that is a real intrigue for them. And also, we humans are of great interest. For instance, many of them, I don't know how many, but many of them have added to our way of being in the sense that they have added to our DNA. They may have, as some people think, created us human beings way back, millennia and millennia ago from earlier life forms. There are theories of that sort, such as put forth by Zecharia Sitchin and others. Anyway, there are many different points of view, even in the Bible, of how we were seeded, influenced, maybe combined with other forms to eventually form the human being species that we are. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of these beings are also very interested in human beings, because it's kind of like, in a way, we're their offspring. So that's a very interesting consideration that many people have not had. So in the extraterrestrial work, it also came to my attention in many, many cases that there is a hybridization program going on. In other words, quite a number of the different extraterrestrial species have a program in which they are creating hybrid beings. That is, part their species and part us, human species. And so they do this in what people experience as abductions. And they take sperm from human women, I mean, eggs from human women and sperm from human men, and then combine that on their spaceships with their DNA and sometimes their reproductive material and create a hybrid embryo. And then they implant that back in the human woman in another experience. She gestates that embryo for, usually 1.5 to 2.5 months. And then they take the woman again and take that little embryo out, put it in a special tank on the spaceship, gestate it for the rest of the months of normal gestation, and then take that baby, that fetus, when developed enough, out of the tank and raise it as a hybrid baby. And those hybrid babies, many of them at the beginning of this program, they did not survive, but they perfected their ways of doing this and the conditions necessary. And a lot of them have been surviving for quite a while, several decades now. And so there are a lot of hybrids. Now, the ones that are one generation away from the human and the extraterrestrial, half and half. In other words, those beings are not human enough because they're half ET. They're not human enough to come and live here on the earth. So they do stay on the ships and assist the other beings. Usually there are a few different types of extraterrestrial species working together. And so the hybrids will work and assist them in various aspects of the work that they do. And many of them might possibly live on another planet. But they do not come here, and they certainly could not live here because they're not human enough to withstand our viruses and bacteria and our kind of food and drink that we consume, and they just would not survive here. But then, anyway, I certainly had lots and lots of information about that program that different people experienced. And many human women have discovered, I mean, probably thousands, maybe millions of human females have discovered sooner or later that they do have hybrid children. And those hybrid children, generally speaking, live with the ETs on the spaceship, but they do get to visit them from time to time. They've even gotten to visit with them very shortly after they're quote unquote born, in other words, taken out of the gestation tank on the ship. And when women have been taken for that purpose, they are asked to hold that baby, newborn, out of the tank, wrapped in swaddling clothes like we do, and to hold that baby, even though the baby doesn't look fully human and might look quite different and quite strange to us. But anyway, they're hold to nourish the baby because since that baby is partly human, they have learned that that baby needs to have the human mother nurturing. And many of the ETs make a point of bringing the human father to meet those babies and children as they are growing up during the years, as well as taking the human mother to continue to know and sort of guide those hybrid children as they grow up. So some women I know have hybrid children who are now fully adult. They're now in their 20s, excuse me, or 30s. And they still know them. And uh, usually, usually they have become very, very fond of them. And some mothers even wish that they could raise those hybrid children here on Earth. Excuse me. Excuse me. Um, but they cannot because the children are not human enough. Okay, now going on, there is another whole group of hybrids, ET human hybrids, who do live on Earth. And those are people, hybrids, who were born here on Earth from a human mother and a human father, but either before conception or during life in the womb, these particular hybrids were hybridized by not only one ET, but usually a group of a few different species of extraterrestrials who worked together and created the hybrid. So, in other words, sometimes they take the eggs from the woman and the sperm from the man and combine that in with their material, creating a new embryo. And then they will plant that embryo in the human mother and let the human mother gestate that embryo, developing into a fetus, developing into a baby ready to be born. And those hybrid babies are born here on Earth. So they have life on Earth. And yet they have the extraterrestrial genetics. And these beings are wonderful beings. Miguel Mendonça and I have written a book about them called Meet the Hybrids. And that gives wonderful information about 8 different ET human hybrids who are living here with us, wonderful, wonderful people who are here totally to upgrade the consciousness of humanity and help humanity. So this is a very expanding, wonderful program that they are doing through their teaching, through their individual sessions, through their workshops, through their writings, through their presentations. I think probably mostly through the personal work with individuals and small groups that they do. Very nourishing, very high consciousness. And because those extraterrestrials who created them would really like to help humanity, they'd really like to upgrade or to help humanity evolve. But because they themselves, these extraterrestrials, cannot come down here, live here, and do that themselves, instead of that, they give their DNA to a baby who is going to be one of the hybrids, so that that baby can grow up with the ET DNA in them and with the many skills that these beings have. So even when these hybrids are very little kids, they realize that they feel very, very different from everybody else, even from everybody else in their family. They feel like they don't really belong here, that this isn't really, really their home. And instead, their home seems to be way out there, and their real family seems to be way out there. Of course, their human family is not very fond of hearing that and assures them, no, no, you were born here. We're your real family. We watched you being born. But they have this sense, and they don't understand it usually as they're growing up, that, you know, the real family, the ones they long to be with, are out there in space. And of course, these hybrids living here have plenty of visits from the very beings who gave them their genetics. So again, usually that's a series of a few different types of beings. So all of those beings who visit these people, these hybrids, they're very welcomed to visit them. They don't consider trips away with them as abductions. They're just, oh, a wonderful chance to be with my real family. And of course, they have already been born with a lot of abilities that most of us don't have, healing abilities, telepathy, very strong series of psychic psychic abilities, a lot of intelligence, a lot of empathy, empathic qualities, um, telepathy. Some of them are wonderful, wonderful animal communicators and locators of lost animals because they can telepathically communicate effectively with them. Um, anyway, they're all healers in various ways, do a lot of physical healing of other human beings and animals. And they're absolutely um, excellent people. We're very, very fortunate to have them helping us to evolve. So they have learned from their extraterrestrial beings um, that the beings would like to see humanity evolve enough to warrant being accepted into the great galactic federation, which is made up of many, many different extraterrestrial species. So far, the world has not been invited, humanity has not been invited to join that federation because we're still too involved in murders and wars and killings and abuses and trafficking of humans and all kinds of atrocities. And until we get past that type of behavior as a species, we do not deserve to be part of that galactic federation. So many of those groups have been through some of the really negative aspects that we are going through, and they have gotten past them. And so over millennia, so they have been allowed to be part of this great federation. And these beings who have created the hybrids and visit them and visit Earth quite a bit, they would really like to see humanity evolve. They would also like to see us ascend and to realize they each said independently they would like to see us know that we are all one. We are all part of the great creative source. So that has been very, very inspiring, wonderful work. And I just thank God that they are here with us. We need them. So now the last category I'd like to mention is about the walk-ins, of which some of you listening to this are, some of you may not be. But walk-ins, I think, are extremely special people because they came either from an extraterrestrial life out in space, or they may have some of them come from a spiritual realm. But in any event, wherever they came from, they made a soul exchange agreement with a person living here who no longer really wanted to be here. They just had had enough of life. They weren't necessarily suicidal, but they just had had it in terms of life. And so that was recognized by this soul out there in the spiritual realm or the extraterrestrial realm who wanted to come here on Earth and have to and would like to skip through babyhood and childhood and teenagehood and come in as an adult so that they could get much sooner to the work, the very high-minded work that they would like to do here on Earth. So what a wonderful thing this is, that the soul of the person who's just had enough, doesn't really want to be here in human life on Earth anymore, is willing to leave that body open to the other one coming in to live in that body, carry on the life of that body, and eventually work through many, many adjustments of that new soul being in this former person's body and taking on the life of that body and all that's in that life, all the people in that life, and get through whatever adjustments that requires, and then into doing the high-minded work that they have come to do. So that some of the hybrids we know, walk-ins whom we know who are here now, have already gone through that and are already well into doing the magnificent work that they are doing, all of which, as with the hybrids, is to upgrade the humanity in various ways to really help us significantly so that we can evolve and become much larger in perspective than we have been. So these walk-ins are doing all kinds of wonderful work. Some of it, for some of them, is physical healing, mental healing, perspective enlarging, teaching, guiding, nurturing. I think the rest of us humans are very, very fortunate that we have walk-ins here with us and we have hybrids with us. And we really need it, in my opinion, as a whole humanity. So God bless it that it is here. So you see, I think that I have been extremely fortunate. I consider it such a blessing that I have been involved in these particular aspects of work, of knowing these people, and sort of when they have asked me, sort of guide them through processes that help them to know and to understand themselves better, and the huge scope of existence from which they come, whether it's past lives or extraterrestrial lives or other realm existence coming into this. You see, I think that we humans, as intelligent as many of us are, and as creative as many of us are, but we're relatively quite limited in some ways. We're limited in what we realize as part of humanity. So I think there have always been people who, throughout our human history, there have always been people who've looked further, like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo and Plato, just to mention a very few, Aristotle. Well, there are a number of people, and the great philosophers and the great religious leaders too, who've thought beyond the material. They've thought into the larger reality and have tried to bring that to people. So it's not totally new to us. But I think now is the time, hopefully, that much of humanity is ready for this larger picture. And that's what some of us are here trying to bring about. So, is there any questions? I would be very happy to welcome some questions. I see a hand up.
That
Loni?
was a beautiful presentation. Thank you so much, Barbara. I always learn
you're
so
welcome.
much from you. Awesome.
Thank you. And I from you.
Oh. Okay, Loni.
Wonderful. I loved it. I am so curious about the fact that you said that the ET hybrid Earth have ET genetics.
Yes.
Is this possibly discovered by geneticists? Can some that be proven or what? That's exciting news though.
Yeah, well, that's a wonderful, wonderful question. And we've given a tremendous amount of thought and some effort to that question too. Of course, we know about genetic testing, and we know about various labs that will take samples for genetic testing. So far, I know of a few hybrid people who've attempted to be genetically tested. In one case, one of the women, not one of the ones in Meet the Hybrids, but another excellent hybrid woman who happens to live in Arizona, she tried with 4 different laboratories to be genetically tested. And one of them came back, and the only results they said was that her family was Jewish, and it was mostly from Northern Europe. That's it. Well, she already knew that she was Jewish, and she already knew her family was from Northern Europe. So that was pretty useless. So she tried another lab, and then 2 others beyond that. And one of the other ones never gave her any results at all. She never found out, even after frequent inquiries, what about the results of what I sent you? So it never answered her. So that was a total waste. And then the other 2 labs said things like, well, you have some that we don't understand, but that's true of everybody. Everybody has, what they call junk DNA, which means that the laboratory people don't understand what it is. It hasn't been identified. So that's really not useful either. So my thought about it is that unless a laboratory had real extraterrestrial genetics from a real extraterrestrial body, which we know we have on Earth because of the UFO crashes and the body retrievals. We know we have several of those hidden away, of course, at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and probably other places too. But unless a laboratory is willing to admit that they have genetics from extraterrestrial to compare the person's genetics to, they would never be able to say, yes, you have extraterrestrial genetics. And they're not about to admit so far that they have extraterrestrial genetics to compare it to. And then there's another consideration as well, which is that 6 of the hybrids from the book Meet the Hybrids all wonderfully joined me for a lecture presentation in 2016 at the International UFO Congress. And we had lunch together, the 6 of us. That was so thrilling because some of them had never met before. A couple of them already knew each other. And one of them was from England, came all the way from England for this, a woman named Charmaine. Anyway, we got together for lunch, and the question about genetic came up, of course, and we were about to make a decision on it. And one of the hybrids had found out that any genetic laboratory is mandated by a certain department of the US government to give the results of everyone's genetic tests, any genetic testing that they do, to that department of the government. And this hybrid who found that out, and she checked it with different labs, she knows what she's talking about. She said, I am not willing to be tested and have the results sent to that department of government because I might be harassed. They might pick me up and try to, investigate me or open me up for genetics or test me or whatever. And I'm just not willing for that kind of hassle. So that made an impact on the other ones too, who had been very reticent about testing. it's not a matter of being afraid of being proved to be wrong. It's just these other factors that are. So another man in Colorado had gotten in touch with me after publication of Meet the Hybrids, and he wanted to combine with my leading it a program of genetic testing. And since the hybrids I already knew didn't want to be tested, but in the meantime, I was being introduced to other people who very much considered themselves to be hybrids and had good reason to think that. And that's where the other woman came in who tried 4 labs and got nothing out of it, wasted that time and money, you know. So anyway, we had started a program and were getting people agreed to be tested, a few people. And then we gave up on it when we realized the labs just weren't going to come forth with anything of any meaning one way or the other. Yeah.
That's sad. Yeah, that's sad. And do you happen to know, my last little bit here, do you happen to know in the genes where that might be, where this genetics physically is? That, you know, like we know if we get gene such and such, that might tell us about if we're going to have breast cancer or something. Do we have any idea, just being someone being a hybrid, do they have any idea? Anybody anywhere out there have an idea of what gene it might be in the human body, I guess?
Oh gosh, that's such a wonderful, important question. I don't know of any hybrid who was told that. The very few hybrids I know who've tried to be tested, nothing meaningful in the least bit in any regard came back. Yeah, so I don't have an answer beyond that for you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Good questions, Lonnie.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lonnie. All right. Oops. Okay.
Barbara?
Yeah. Barbara, you're muted.
All right. Is that better?
Yes, I went to lower a hand and I think I accidentally hit that. Where are we?
Okay.
Okay.
Am I all right now?
Yes.
Yeah, I
So
wasn't touching anything. I thought, how did that happen?
no, it was on my end. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not the greatest tech person here. So,
Okay, so
hold on,
Jacqueline, I think Jacqueline.
Barbara?
Yes, hi,
TR
Jacqueline.
had his hand up.
Oh, okay.
Oh, sorry.
Well, why don't we go ahead with Jacqueline since she's right there,
Sure.
and then Cindy. We
Oh,
won't
well,
forget you, Cindy.
hi, Barbara. I just so want to thank you for this incredible presentation tonight.
Thank you.
Just wonderful information, and I've got to learn more about your earlier life, which is wonderful. And so one thing I just really wanted to share with the group in that is I wanted to let you know I just have read your book.
Oh, good, Jacqueline. Yay.
I think it's absolutely wonderful, perfect.
Oh,
The illustrations are, I think, perfect for, you know, having, I think they're just perfect. I love the book and I think it's great for children and adults.
thank you so much.
And I want
Means
to,
a lot coming from you.
well, I really, I love the illustrations and I could really relate to them.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to let you know that I went, oh yeah, I remember that.
Oh, good, good.
When the child is being beamed up to the ship and that, I'm going, yeah, this is really fun, like flying. And but it just an amazing job by you and Mary. So I want to thank
Oh,
you for doing this book. It's just wonderful. And I
Oh,
think
thank
it's
you, Jacqueline.
so well written. And again, the illustrations really, for me, I could really identify, you know,
Oh, good.
since I've been on the ships and that, I could really identify with
Uh-huh.
the illustrations and that. So,
Oh, that's great. Well, each one of the scenarios there, each one of the pictures, um, actually, the scenarios came right from the work I've directly done with people.
right,
So
right.
one of the big points of doing the book, even though it's directed primarily for children, but our thought is that an adult reading the book to children or picking it up otherwise anyway could easily be triggered about their own experiences that they had had as children, that
Exactly.
they might, I've met so many adults who finally come forward for a regression. And because they were triggered by something that they saw somewhere or heard, um, that reminded them of an experience that they had had as a child that they had long since forgotten about. And suddenly, bang, it's up there in their memory. And then they begin to think more, oh, yeah, let's see, I was about 6 years old. Now I'm remembering that when I was about 10, something happened. And when I was about 12, and, it begins to stimulate some memories. And if they can talk about that, well, first of all, if they can get some validation, like you're mentioning, um,
Right.
it would be a wonderful thing for them. And if they can open up and talk to their children or somebody else because of the book, can talk about their own experiences, that's a wonderful, liberating thing for people.
Well,
So
it's wonderful. And I just wanted to mention it's Kids Adventures with ET Friends in Space, and you can get it at Amazon.
Amazon,
So,
yeah.
But I just thank you for putting out. Actually, I've made very similar drawings of some of my experiences of the different beings in that. So that was really fun and delightful to see. So
Oh, great.
I just wanted to thank you from my heart. And
Oh, you're welcome. And I want to say, Jacqueline, that when Mary and I decided to do this book, I got out big pieces of paper, and for the next 2 or 3 weeks, every night when I was thinking of a type of experience that I knew about that I wanted to depict, that I drew um, line drawings of I love them. I'm going to keep them forever, and then I gave them to Mary, and then she did some computer work and got them colored in.
okay,
But I just love the ones that I did.
they are wonderful. I mean, they are really wonderful. So I just wanted to thank you, and thank you for all the information and the talk tonight. So
Oh, you are so welcome. Thank you. And Jacqueline, I would like to ask you a favor since you really enjoyed the book so much and you're so qualified to know about it and enjoy. The favor is if you would go to the Amazon book page and
right.
scroll way down past the other books they suggest. Amazon always does that.
I know.
Why don't you buy these too? But beyond that, down below that, there's a place where you can submit a review,
Yeah, I will do
and,
that.
a sentence or two,
Sure.
and you can use your name or not as you wish.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But that would be excellent and we've got some really, really good reviews on there too.
Terrific.
Yeah, so that helps
Yeah.
to encourage people to buy the book.
Yeah, it does. So
Of course, we would like people to do. Thank you.
thank you. Thank you. I love you.
Wonderful. So happy to see you.
You too.
Okay, Cindy, how about you now? We kept you waiting.
Oh, that's okay. I wanted to hear Jacqueline talk to you anyway, because it was through Jacqueline's presentation that I discovered your book, Meet the Hybrids. And
Yay.
I can't wait to get through it. I
And
just
you know, Jacqueline is in that.
oh yeah, that's
That's the
right.
Jacqueline who's in the book. Yeah.
Now that you mention it, I do remember seeing her name. But yeah,
Uh-huh.
it was actually, right after her presentation, I went on Amazon and I got your book immediately. And I was
Good.
so excited that you were going to do a presentation tonight, which I put on Wish Client's site. And I am so thankful. This was an awesome, awesome presentation. Thank you for
Oh,
all the information. I also wanted to ask you, first of all, I was very excited that you got into this through dance, which is something
oh,
I absolutely love. So that was
oh,
fascinating to me, that led
yeah.
to everything else. But
Good, good.
I was wondering, how do you get your client to get so deep that they have the regression of these hybrid experiences? And do you feel different, when you're working with them at that level? Do you shift too?
Oh, great thing to wonder about. Yes. Well, first of all, to get to that level, I usually take about, I'd say, approximately 15 minutes of giving deep relaxation suggestions. And while I'm giving the relaxation suggestion, I'm mentioning things like the subconscious part of the person's mind has recorded absolutely everything that they've experienced, even the things that happened to them that they were not at the time consciously aware of. But the subconscious part of the mind is recording it anyway and stores it. And so when we're looking for it, that's part of the what we call the induction for the
Yes.
relaxation part, that I mention things like that to let the person know that there is a part of them that knows everything they're wondering about, because it's all there. And what the subconscious part of the mind records everything that happens and stores it and will yield it when we ask for it, when we really want it. And so I mentioned that, and I also mentioned, as we're going deeper and deeper into relaxation, that the person's higher knowing, their higher self, comes into this, their soul and their spirit guides, all gathering to help them to know the details that they want to know and to help them with it. And so by the time, and then I count from 10 down to 1, that's the last part of the deepening. And saying that when we get down to 1, there will be there at that time and place that they were wondering about when something peculiar happened that indicated they might have had an extraterrestrial encounter, or in some cases they know they had. And or it might have been a vivid UFO sighting that got pretty close. And they might or might not have had missing time. And but it's, and some experience usually that the person has been wondering about for a long time. Sometimes they've wondered for 40 years or 50 years, and then finally find there's a person they can come to for finding it because of regression. So then after counting down from 10 to 1, I say, okay, you are there now. It's 1952 and you're in the bedroom in the attic at your grandmother's house or wherever they had said that they were when they thought these peculiar things happened. And so we start from moment 1 of their being aware of something different going on, and then go right through moment by moment by moment. So it's a long process because most of the encounter experiences happen over a period of an hour or more, sometimes even an hour or 2 hours. And so the regression, since we're reliving it moment by moment, takes that length of time too. So it's always a fairly long session. It's not like a psychic reading where a person can come in and pay for 15 minutes or half an hour or an hour or whatever. It's different than that. And I think it's very valuable because it comes right from the person himself or herself, and not from somebody else telling them what happened, but it's they're reliving it, and then there's no doubt for them that this happened. And of course, sometimes people have asked me, people who are not regressed, ask me, well, couldn't it just be their imagination? So very often after the regression is finished, I'll say, well, what do you make of that? Do you think that was your imagination? And they say, no, it wasn't, because they could feel the full emotion or any physical feelings. And, you know, and they'll usually, vehemently say, no, that was not my imagination. I know now that really, really happened. Yeah. So it's good. It's good to
Feel
check
different?
that.
Do you feel different like you did with the crop circles, which I find fascinating that you could feel the energy at these
Oh,
crop circles? Does something like that happen when you get a client regressed to that level?
yes, I do. And I do. I mean, I get into a very deep state too, but because I'm guiding it and I'm taking notes on every word
Mm,
that the person says, and sometimes the words that I say, that keeps me from being too deep.
mm,
Because if I was too deep, I wouldn't be able to be a very good guide. And so actually, there have been tests, brainwave tests on this. I participated when I was with my past life therapy community of professionals. We brought an expert in from Colorado, a brain, I think it was called brain mind
wow.
technician or brain technology or something. Anyway, about brain research. And what we were looking for is what are the effective brainwave states for doing regression? And also, what's the difference between the brainwave state of the person getting regressed and the brainwave state of the person doing the conducting the regression? So I participated as a person being regressed, which truthfully, one of the most important regressions of my entire life, which I'll be glad to give a side note on. But anyway, what we discovered in the testing, so I had these little uh, things attached to my head, and so did the man regressing me. And we found out that typically when you're being regressed, you go from beta, which we're in right now, beta, alert, awake, conscious state, into alpha brainwave state as we're going down into relaxation. And then for the regression, we might be in lower alpha. That's perfectly good for regression, whether it's ET or past life or this life regression. And then very often the client will also go into an even deeper state, the theta brainwave state. If they go into delta, which is possible, that's not as good for regression, because in regression, it's important for the person being regressed to be able to say words, express what's going on as it's going on. So the person leading the regression can guide them through the process. We need to know what's going on. So alpha, especially a deeper alpha and theta is perfect. So we were tested for that. And what we discovered, not only that part, but we discovered that as the person being regressed became deeper in brainwave state that pulled down to some extent, quite an extent, pulled down the brainwave state of the person conducting the regression. And yet, as I said a couple minutes ago, the person conducting it needs to not get totally down into that state, or they could not function as the guide. And they wouldn't be able to bring the person out because they'd be too deep themselves. So I've noticed that in conducting. I mean, gosh, I must have done multi-thousands of regressions between the past life regressions and the extraterrestrial, probably 8,000 or so. I mean, who knows? I've lost count of the past life long ago. Anyway, I notice once in a while that I'm going too deep, and I have to do something like pinch myself or take my pen and jab it against my hand or blink or move my head or something to not, to kind of alert myself a little bit so that I'm not so deep that I can't really function as a conductor of the experience, wouldn't be able to bring the person back out. That's always important. Bringing the person back out to regular function and consciousness, especially when somebody drives a car to see me and they're going to drive away. I make sure that they're really fully out and fully alert, and we debriefed the session, what they found, and very often they find that's a very meaningful part of the process as well.
Wow.
Those are very worthy things to wonder about. Appreciate the questions.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for such an extended answer to my question. It's fascinating, and such fascinating info in this presentation, which I was
Thank
looking
you.
forward to because I knew it would be like this. I just had that feeling. And now
Good
I
for
want to read
you.
your other book too.
Okay, great.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome, Cindy. Very gratifying, of course. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you, Cindy.
Anybody else?
Okay, Ross. And then we have two more questions, one from Gary and then Kevin.
I see TR.
Yeah.
Walk here. He has his hand up.
Barbara, hi Barbara, how you doing?
Fine.
We have met a couple years ago or so when you have presented to us at Boulder Excel. So it was really, I think so. I have introduced you, or I'm not sure. Maybe one of my team members who did the introduction. But yes, it was really awesome presentation, and we really enjoyed you being here in Colorado and being here in Boulder. So
wonderful.
That was really awesome. So yes, and thank you, Gary, for organizing. That was always a pleasure.
Yeah.
So Barbara, yes, I've read you.
Oh, I can't hear. The sound is gone.
Oh.
Sure.
And I also cannot see. I cannot see who's speaking.
Yeah. Do you see me?
No.
No.
I just see. I see 5 women. That doesn't seem like you.
Do you hear me?
I hear you now.
Oh,
that's
so my question is, it's what I'm trying to understand is, yes, there are some very awesome souls are coming to this plane of existence. Do you experience, or do you see any maybe world leaders coming in those capacities, as a walk-in, as a incarnate souls from other places that really can, their path, their, I guess so, contract is to help us in evolution on, I would say, on the global level, maybe political level?
Well, I dearly wish that there were wonderful souls coming in as world leaders. I don't
This
I
is
don't
weird.
have that in my view. I don't recognize that. I think that's always a possibility. I don't recognize that we have any such soul being a world leader at this time. But what a wonderful idea you have. And maybe that could still happen. Maybe we who are hearing this question from you can put our minds to inviting such a soul to come in and get to be a world leader and get to be of great influence among humanity. That wouldn't that be a wonderful, wonderful thing? I wish I could say that I think we have that now. I don't, in my limited perspective, see that. But boy, I dearly wish for it. There are many, many times I have wished for that already. Yeah, but anyway, I mean, it maybe we, even a small group of us like this, can put our consciousness in a similar direction and ask some advanced soul like that to come in and find a way through our political system, um, which is pretty treacherous, I think, find a way to become a world leader and be a wonderful influence.
Yeah, because let's say if it's water leader, or let's say it's a Colorado, let's say governor of Colorado, future and governor says yes, he or she says I am a walk-in, or I come from this and this place, and I want to lead this state into greater reality of awareness and greater reality of consciousness, and I would love to see that.
I would too. Yes. That person, politically speaking, would probably take an enormous chance, would be quite a risk. I think because there's so many other people in politics who would just not go for that, would not trust it. They don't know about it, and so many of the power people are very dedicated to keeping whatever power they have, not to making changes for the better. But I'm with you, sir. I would love to see that and love to see that be successful.
Mm.
We need it. We really need it.
Yeah, paradigm have to change. Paradigm must change, and things are
Yes,
changing.
I completely agree. So you see, those of us listening to this, we can try to do what we can do with people we know. I mean, at least we can do that. We can start these conversations about this thing and show them that, tell them if they don't know that there is a larger reality and there are superb, well-meaning beings. I mean, even here amongst us humans, there are, but it just seems like these wonderful people don't take the route of going through politics, to become a big world leader. Although I think that there are some politicians who are well-meaning and of a higher consciousness, shall we say, who've made it through the ranks to some political positions. But I think that, and here and there, you hear about somebody who's standing up for something so good that, and I just cheer them on. But then the rest of the political machine seems to kind of clamp down on that. So that's not to say that it could never happen, but boy, it's tough. I mean, anybody coming to really make a change for the better has an incredible challenge to withstand the systems that we've got set up, the whole political thing and the egos and the need for power and control that certain people have. I mean, it's mighty. So, oh boy, I wish anybody well who can take that on and really effectively achieve doing better. So let's keep that in our minds, our thoughts, our hearts, that could happen. Those of us who even think about
Thank
it.
thank you. Thank you for the answer and encouragement.
Yeah,
Thank you, Ross.
we could just do our little bit. Is that picture of you the one who just spoke?
Yes, that's just me. That's just me. It looks like I'm trying to go live, start a video, and I don't know, I'm in the bad area where I'm at, and just cuts me off. I think it's the bandwidth. So it's just, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for the picture. That's good. That's a wonderful picture.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Ross. Let's see.
Thanks.
Gary, I think you had a question.
Yeah, Barbara, I was just curious, have you ever regressed, or how many people have you regressed back into a near-death experience, and how successful has that been?
Oh, great question, Gary. I've not regressed anybody to a near-death experience. I would love to have the opportunity to do that, but I have regressed people into that interlife, that between life state of being when we're in the spirit realm. I've done some of those, but not specifically to a near death. But boy, I'm very, very interested in that and read anything that I come across that has to do with that. Because that is so fascinating, and that relates a lot to what every one of us will be experiencing at some point in time when we get there, when we're in that state of being after leaving the physical body. Yeah, I love to hear Dannion Brinkley speak, and I've read, various other accounts of the near-death experiences. Some people in those actually have the out-of-body consciousness, but they don't go actually into a whole different realm. Like they'll stay around the hospital and check out what's on other floors and so forth. But I've regressed somebody who's quite well known years ago, Ozzy Osbourne, the musician. So Warner Brothers asked me to go to a certain place out in the country to regress Ozzy Osbourne, because they thought that Ozzy Osbourne had seen an extraterrestrial. I mean, no, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. He thought that the director thought that Ozzy Osbourne had seen a UFO when he was performing in, I think it was Chicago, years ago. There was a big public hoopla about a UFO came over the stadium or whatever venue he was outdoors, that he was doing a concert at, a daytime concert, I think. And the audience saw this big UFO closely overhead, and they assumed that Ozzy Osbourne had seen it. But when we actually got to the place where we were doing the filming, and he was lying down getting ready for the regression, and so I said, let's go back to your seeing the UFO at that concert that you gave in Chicago. And he said, oh, I never saw it because I went to the men's room I was inside when the UFO came and didn't apparently stay terribly long. And so then, here we were, the cameras and the sound equipment, everything ready to go, official Warner Brothers, So then I quickly said, well, okay, if we are not going to do a regression to that because you never did have that experience, is there anything else that you wonder about? I thought, here we are, we've gone miles and miles out of our way, and we're all set up and ready to go. We ought to regress to something. So I asked if there was anything else in his life that he had wondered about. And he said, yes, it was a near-death experience he had had. So I said, okay, let's go ahead and do that. So we did that regression, and he had I think it was a motorcycle accident he had, and he had a near-death experience, but he never went into the spirit realm, but he did go to various places on the earth, even quite far away. And like, I think it was Australia. And we got a lot of detail of whatever he'd been aware of in that astral state. And then his coming back into his body, being revived in the hospital, after being rescued from that. But then there have been other people that I've regressed to that interlife experience. In other words, we've done a past life regression. And then after the dying, the leaving the body for the last time, in that lifetime, some people have wanted to go on, what goes on now in the spirit realm. So we've done some of those before the person came back into another lifetime. So I would imagine that a lot of those experiences are quite similar. In one of them, they came back into this lifetime, the near-death ones, and in the other ones, it was the finishing of a lifetime here, and then that interim spiritual time before incarnating again. But it's the same realm that we're talking about.
Sometimes in a near-death experience, you experience the life review, where you experience reliving your whole life. That could take a lifetime to get through.
Apparently, that's very, very quick.
Yeah, it is.
I mean,
when
from
you're
from
on the other
our
side,
point
it's
of
quick.
yeah, from our point of view, from what I've heard from many people, it's a really quick process. But you go through everything from when you were really little, from your earliest recollections, right up to the moment that you died. I think that must be fascinating.
That happened to me when I was held underwater, and I already couldn't hold my breath any longer, and so it happened that quick. Yeah.
Really? How long do you think you were out, shall we say?
Well, I don't think it could have been that long, because I popped out of the water and I was didn't have to be resuscitated, so it couldn't have been more than a handful of seconds.
Well, that's good. I'm glad. I'm glad you made it back out. So you, in that quick experience, you had the life review?
Yes, and a lot more that I don't really recall, but yes, the life review was a big part of it. So Glenda said she's had 4 near-death experiences, clinically dead. So she was a lot deeper than I was. She might want to comment.
Who had that?
I did. I was.
You did?
Yep. I was the shortest that I was dead clinically called in, that they called it, was 4 minutes. The longest was 15.
Wow.
Yeah. And yes, you do review your life like that. In your,
So
in my time,
each time.
Yep. And then each time you review up to that point, and then they tell you whether it's your time or not. And they kept telling me not my time yet. Still got a lot of trouble to cause out here.
Well, I hope you're doing it.
Oh, I'm
Hope you've
having
gotten to
fun.
it.
I am
Yeah.
having fun. Thank you.
Linda, is
Oh,
that
good for
when you
you.
brought back your gifts?
What was
Is
that?
that when your gift? Is that when you brought back your gifts?
No, I've had my gifts from birth, but I do come back stronger every time. If that's
Amazing.
makes sense. Yes.
So
Amazing.
each time you had the life review,
Mm-hmm.
did the same things come up?
Mostly, yes. But you actually review all of your life, like bum bum bum. You remember different little details every time. But while you're there, it's like a whole movie. You watch, you know how you watch the same movie a few times, and every time you
Mhm.
see it, you see something different. Well, it's the same thing. Or you realize, oh, I don't remember that the other times. Yep, the same way. But and then you meet the energy that is on the other side, and a lot of it I recognized being my so-called family in this lifetime that had passed on. And
Hmm.
when they talked to me and what they said, and basically I'm not ready, and then all of a sudden I would get touched in the forehead, and boom, I would hear the people around me yelling and screaming that, she's back, she's back.
Wow.
So
Oh my goodness, that must be so shocking.
the
I
first
mean, all
time,
of it,
yes, the
including to
first,
come back.
yes, I didn't want to come back. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
it was so peaceful over there. So every time.
When you, Glenda, when you had the life review,
Hmm.
um, I'm trying to imagine, I have not had that experience, trying to imagine what that would be like. Is it as if, like when you review from when you were a little child,
Hmm.
do you experience
Actually,
it from the point of view of being a little child?
I actually experienced from the point of view of being in utero.
Of being what?
In utero, when my mother was pregnant with me, and
Oh, really?
I remember seeing myself in liquid, and looking all around, and hearing her voice, and hearing my father's voice. So yes, I remember all that.
Wow. And then when you were a baby and then like a toddler and so forth, did
Yes,
it go in
yes,
chronological order?
yes, it does.
Huh.
It's very interesting, very interesting.
Oh, yeah.
And truthfully, I usually don't talk about it, but I always, it's nice to see that other people actually
Hmm.
experience that.
Yeah.
To hear it.
Lots of people,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, have. And I think it's more and more easy for people to talk about it because, the more people who come out with it, the more
Right.
sort of normal it
Right.
sounds. Yeah. Well,
Yes.
I just have so much respect for those of you who've had those experiences. Wow. I mean, how amazing.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
And it's you really want to say exactly how it is on the other side, but you don't want to give too much because you don't want to encourage people to go too fast with their own by their own doing, so to speak. So
You mean to want to get there sooner?
right, some people
Yeah,
might,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
it's if it's not your time, it's not your time. So
No.
you still need to do work here, and you still need to learn lessons. So
Wow. Well, I appreciate your sharing about this.
I
Yeah.
appreciate this. This is beautiful, Tay. It's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
I had a really amazing to me experience years ago, 1983. My mother died very quickly in a car accident across the country. She was in Connecticut, I was in California. So I went back and, did the service and cremation and all that. And then when I came back out here again to California, I realized that, well, I had realized all the time that I wished I had wish I'd had a meeting with her before she died, because I didn't know she was going to die that quickly in a car accident.
Right.
But there was no closure. And there were so many things I wanted to say. So I went out to a meditation room in the California desert and sat there on the floor, leaning against the wall, closed my eyes, pictured her in every way I could picture her. In my mind, I called her name,
Mm-hmm.
all of the names, normal name, her nickname, Mom, Mommy, when I was a little kid, you know,
Mm-hmm.
all of that, anything she was ever called. And kept picturing her as much as I could. And then suddenly I had the very strong sense she was there. Now my eyes were closed, but she was there. I
Right.
could feel her presence from the spirit world. And so I told her, expressed the things that I had wanted to. And then when that was finished, she said, "Oh, come with me." So I must have at that point, I think, left my body. I must have
Mhm.
gone in my astral body, because I found myself in her realm,
Mm-hmm.
which is not here, the physical realm.
Right.
And she showed me her reuniting with her mother,
Mm-hmm.
because her mother had died when my mother was 3 years old.
Oh.
She'd had 80 years of her life until she died without a mother, ever. No stepmother, even.
Mm.
And she knew that I felt very sorry for her, because she was a very nice mother, and but she had grown up without a mother. And I remember one time, probably I was a teenager, and I had asked her, "How do you know how to be such a nice mother when you never had a mother?" And she said, "Well, I just have always tried to be the kind of mother that I wish that I had had."
Wow.
And I mean, how sweet,
That is
how
wonderful.
generous. So she knew that that was an issue for me, that I had always been concerned about, that she never had the benefit of a mother. And yet she was a good mother herself.
Mhm.
And so she showed me her reuniting with that mother who had died when she was 3 years old. And they embraced in the most loving, happy embrace. And I, sitting a few feet away, it seemed
Right.
like, watching this, I just deluged into tears of love and gratitude and
Mhm.
happiness and relief. And that brought me back into my body on the meditation room floor. And I cried
Beautiful.
for 4 hours.
It's just overwhelming, the love that's up there. Just overwhelming.
You know, just so much feeling that all I could do was cry
Mm-hmm.
and sob.
Yep. Yep.
So that was a real gift.
Yes.
And
Yes, it
you've
is.
had your real gifts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm very
Do you feel
blessed.
like you've changed some of your behavior or your attitude since you've had those experiences?
Um, yes. The third time I had forgotten how to live. I survived. I was here, but I wasn't living life.
Uh,
And that brought me back to get real. Life is too short. Enjoy what you can here and do whatever you need to do. And and 2 months after that, I bought a motorcycle.
a motorcycle.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yep. So
So you're living the way that you want to live?
I wanted to, yes. Well, I sold that, but that was a long time ago. But yes, I wanted to
But you
ride
did
the
that for a
motorcycle.
while.
Yeah, I did
Yeah.
whatever I wanted to experience, and that was the key. I saw an
Okay.
opportunity and I took it. So
And how about now?
now I'm living my gorgeous life. I have a center. I've always wanted to have a spiritual center. I'm
Oh,
doing these things. I'm in the Wish Alliance as an ambassador. I'm having fun. I'm having lots
oh,
of
good
fun.
for you. Good for
Yes,
you.
yes. Thank you.
That's great. That's, that's a good inspiration for us all.
hmm Blessed with
Yeah,
every single step I take. So
wonderful. Thank you.
thank you.
I love the backdrop behind you too.
Oh, thank you. There it is.
Yeah, look at those lighted chakras.
Yeah.
Woohoo! Wow, that's great. That's gorgeous.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else want to comment or ask a question?
Yes, we have Kevin.
Kevin? Okay.
Hi, Barbara. That was a fascinating presentation. I thoroughly
Thank you.
enjoyed it. It was fascinating. I did have a
Wonderful.
question for you, but however, you answered the question within your presentation. But I thought I would I would still ask you the question and go through it because it's
Okay.
a question I've had for many years, and I consider myself a starseed. I've had
Uh-oh.
different species from the age of
The
8.
screen,
And
excuse me, the screen froze for a little bit there.
okay, I was saying that I
Yeah.
had a contact with a group of 8 ETs, different species, from the age of 8. And they've guided me and taught me throughout my life, and I'm still in contact with them today. But my question would have been, how do you differentiate between a starseed and a hybrid? But you answered that question because you said the hybrids that are here are able to communicate with animals. I'm able to do that with insects, other animals, butterflies, dragonflies, grasshoppers, any of those animals I can communicate with. And then I have the telepathic abilities to communicate with all the 8 ETs that I've been brought up with, as it were. But now I've met other ETs that I can have telepathic communication with. And I'm able to travel outside of my body to the higher realms to meet my deceased family members and family friends that have died. So I have all those things that you say. But the other thing is, our ET star families are able to co-create or create using thought and consciousness. And one of the things they do, they will create a craft, a conscious craft. They will separate their conscious energy from their physical. They have physicals as well, like we do. Then enter that craft as pure conscious energy and travel throughout the cosmos, travel throughout the universe. I'm able to do that as well. They taught me how to do that. So now I really think that I didn't want to be a hybrid. I was happy being a starseed. But because I have all those abilities that you described, I'm going to have to upgrade myself now. so we'll have to wait and see. But I do find it fascinating that everything that you said about that just related to me tremendously. So thank you very much for answering that question that I've been pondering for many years. And I never wanted to be a hybrid. I'm happy being a starseed. But thank you. Thank you much.
Well, you've had quite an amazing life and group of experiences, far more than most people do. I mean, I think you're very privileged to have that. I think anybody, frankly, anybody who is a hybrid is very, very special and very privileged, and they get this support from the other beings, which most humans don't have or are certainly not aware of it if we have it. But those hybrids have a tremendous amount of support and real love, that unconditional love.
and I would agree. And I think someone said here, I think it might have been Glenda, when she went to the other side, when I've been to the higher realms of consciousness and met with my deceased family and friends going back over 300 years, the amount of love that emanates from them is tremendous. It's just huge. So much so that really you don't want to come back to the physical. And very often they tried to persuade me to stay there, but I knew that I was actually enjoying the physical, so I did come back. But I know that they're all still there, and I think it's just fascinating that we're all coming together now. We're all connected on this journey. And I met Sheila through her walk-in conference. I didn't know what walk-ins were, so I thought I'll have to find out. And I met Sheila, and her story is absolutely fascinating. And it just adds to the whole concept and understanding of consciousness. So I think we're all on a great journey together, and I think exciting times ahead. So thank you again, Barbara, for solving that problem for me. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all that too. I mean, that's wonderful. What a fascinating existence you've been having. Yeah, and you can ask your beings anything you want to ask them, you know.
Yes, I've done that all my life. In fact, I never thought they were anything special. I just thought they were part of my extended family. I was with your grandparents or your aunts and uncles. And anytime I had a problem, I would just ask them. Or I remember when I was 16 or 17, I said to Orton, I know there's much more to this reality. Can you show me more? And they just take me out, as your uncle or grandparent would take you out in the car and travel around the different subdivisions and things. They would take me beyond that and show me many different things. But to me, it was normal. It's just the way I was brought up, as it were. So,
you know, these are not experiences that everybody has.
I'm beginning to understand that now, and I'd never spoken out. It was only a couple of years ago they asked me to speak out and write about my experiences with them, so I now do. So, but as I said, meeting so many fascinating people.
Yeah. So, are you doing writing then?
I've written a couple of books, and I've done some radio shows and things. So I do speak out about it now quite openly, and I'm quite confident about doing that. So. Yeah, just fascinating. So yeah.
Oh, good. Do you like sharing about those extraordinary experiences?
Once I start talking, Barbara, you can't shut me up.
I'm that way too. Yeah. Well, you know, I think we are very, very blessed. Any of us who have these unusual experiences, and it certainly seems to be the time now in history to be sharing much, much more of this. So good for you. I'm glad you're doing that. Yeah,
yes,
and enjoying it too.
Again, one thing that you said, Barbara, in your talk, sometimes the light comes into your house or light comes into the room. And about 3 years ago, I'd got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. I came back, got into the bed, and then a light appeared outside the bedroom window. It came into the bedroom. It lit up the bedroom like a myriad of butterflies, just pure white light. And then Orton D materialized at the bottom of the bed and asked me to write and talk about my lifelong interactions with them. And that's when I started. And it's led me down this journey now, again, where I've met these fascinating people. So, and the journey continues, and we're all doing that journey together now. So I'm really excited for the future. And my ET guys tell me that we are moving towards the golden years for humanity. And I'm working towards that and working with others. And I say it's just an amazing journey.
Well, I'm glad for those good words of hope too. Yeah. Good. Well, what a nice emissary you are.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I could imagine many people who might be very skeptical about these things. If they listen to you, they think, you know, is it kind of like they'd feel disarmed? I mean, in other words, more open and more receptive to what you're saying?
I haven't found that any animosity towards what I'm saying. And even my own friends, their minds are opening up to this now. So I'm pleased that I haven't received any negative comments, negative thoughts and things. So it's all been positive, which is really supports me and builds my confidence. Not that I need any confidence in relation to speaking out about it, but I have a mission here. My mission is to share my lifelong interaction with my ET star guides, all 8 of them, and then to help facilitate the physical reveal. That's what they call it, the reveal. And they want that now to come from the citizens of Earth, and I'm working towards that with others to implement a mandated protocol to receive them. We will request them to come and meet with us once we have this mandated protocol implemented by our citizens of Earth. And I'm working on that as we speak now. So as I say, exciting times ahead.
Oh, good for you. That's great. Yeah. And here and there, I meet people on rare occasion, but I meet people who have been charged with there are 3 different people now, unconnected with each other, who have been given the job, shall we say, the task of finding a location here on Earth where some of the beings would be able to come and live undisturbed by the people who would be freaked out by beings from elsewhere coming here. So it would have to be like a rural place, a very private place. And these people I've met have really dedicated themselves to doing that, which is wonderful. So I think sooner or later that will happen. But the beings want to have that safe, secluded place to come to before they actually land and try to stay here, because they know how reactive and how dangerous we can be. Yes, so anything you can do to pave the way for that, I think is really good.
Yeah, I'm sure that's the case, Barbara, but I'm just one small piece in a very large jigsaw. I'm unimportant without the rest of the pieces. It's all those small pieces when they come together that give us that full picture. And that's the importance of it, really. Not just one individual or one small piece of the jigsaw. It's the whole. And we here, part of the whole. And there's many other parts as well. And once we get them all connected together, then we will actually co-create, using thought and consciousness, the reveal that my ET guides are talking about. So we will create it through co-creation of thought and consciousness. And they want us to get to that level of understanding of consciousness where we can co-create, when we can communicate, and there are many of us now that can do that. So we've reached that level of consciousness where we can openly communicate with them, where we can openly co-create with them. So again, it's just really now going through the next steps, the next stages, and bringing everyone together under the one umbrella, which a lot of people are doing now. There are many people like Sheila, like Mark Sims, like Mark Gower. Neil Gower. They're all bringing these other people together. And then the people that have been in the industry, so I would say, for many years, like Kathy Marden and Ray Hernandez, he's only been here 2 years, but all these people are being brought together, and we will co-create that new reality, that society that we desire for our children, for our future generations, and that new society will be co-created with the ETs, and that society will include them. So that's where we're heading, and we're heading there rapidly.
Good. Hear, hear. That's very good news. And good for you for really being right in there doing this.
Well, I think, Barbara, they never asked anything of me, and I've been in contact with them now. I'm 67, so that's quite a long time. And they never asked me for anything. So I think this small thing that they're asking me to do, to speak out and write about it, about my contact, is just a small way of paying back the privileged life that I've had that you mentioned earlier in relation to an understanding of consciousness and the beauty that surrounds us on our planet with all the life that we share on our planet. Very often we don't take time to stop and look and watch and listen. We live in a beautiful world already. We need to slow down and stop and have a look. And then perhaps we'll take care of the planet and take care of one another, which I'm sure we can do. So exciting times ahead. I'll shut up now, Barbara, because I'll keep going.
Well, it's worth your keeping going. Yeah, but I think anyway, thank you so much for that. That's just wonderful. And I think we should open it up to anybody else who might have a question. But thank you, Kevin, very much. Where are you located, by the way?
I'm in Florida.
Oh, Florida. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that a real scene behind you out the window?
No, it's a backdrop. I do a lot of Zooms now, and I have a closet behind me that's untidy. So I thought I better hide the untidiness and put a backdrop.
Oh. Okay. I was wondering where it's still daytime, like it
No,
looks like out
it's
there.
dark now. That's my lamp that's on. So
Yeah, you're dark by now because I almost am. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Well, Sheila, do you think there's anybody else who wants to ask a question?
I don't see anyone's hand raised. There have been lots of wonderful comments, and I can actually send you a copy of all those comments if you would like to look through those, because some
Sure,
people
I
have
would.
left messages for you too. So very great.
Okay. Yeah,
Well,
I would
I
like
want
that
to
because
thank you.
I didn't want to take my attention away from Kevin or Glenda or whomever was speaking to read the comments. So I noticed that they were there, but I didn't read them. So I would like to. Yeah.
Okay, great. So again, I do want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming. Your presence is
very
just
welcome.
always a real blessing to everybody and so informative. And Barbara, along with Jacqueline, I'm going to share my screen real quick, will be in attendance and speaking at the hybrid conference, which will be coming up on July 24th and 25th. It'll start at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And so if you have not registered, please be sure to do so. It's going to be a wonderful conference, 2 days of lively conversation, talking in depth with hybrids, about their experiences, about what goes on behind the scene. And so I also want to share with you the remainder of our monthly meetings that we have going on. This Thursday, we have the family reunion coming up, which will be kind of like the open mic. Anyone can share their stories. And I think we have a few people. I think Glenda said she will share a little bit more of her story, and we have others. Then on the 22nd, on the celebration of the Mary Magdalene Feast Day, we're going to have Marianne Hernandez, and she actually channels Mary Magdalene. So that'll be very interesting. And then we have Kalina and Rama at the end on the 29th. And this is with the divine masculine and divine feminine. And so it's going to be a very exciting, action-filled, very informative month. We also then in August, we'll be switching gears a little bit, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about contact. We're going to be talking about the secret space program, and we have another lady who is a hybrid that will be speaking with us. And then in September, we'll be discussing angels. And so we'll have a couple guest speakers for that time. I know Joan of Angels said today that she would be happy to come and to speak with us. And let's see. Is she still with us? Yes. Zeri, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Is it Zeriel will be speaking also about her experiences, and she's a walk-in as well as all of her experiences with the angelic realm. In October, I think we're going to do maybe some paranormal type of presentations. November, we have channelers, and in December, we're going to end up with more of like psychic abilities and our light bodies again. And so if you are not signed up and you would like to be part of all of these different meetings, which are free of charge, you can go to info@wishalliance.org and just let me know your information. But the best way is to go to the wishalliance.org website, and you can just put all of your information in there. And so also want to thank Neil with Portal to Ascension. He has been airing us. We have another 56 people who have joined us there tonight, and we had 33 with us earlier. So we're getting our message out there, and that's what this is all about, creating community, sharing information, and allowing people to speak their truths. And so I want to thank everyone again for coming tonight. And if no one has any further comments, let's see, Jacqueline, are you still with us? Let's see, Jacqueline Smith, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here.
I was wondering if you would be so kind as to maybe send us off with a beautiful light language blessing.
Oh, I would love it. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
A blessing. Shoki tiatala ki amalia, uma ki ira kari amaho si ira. Ushuku tiana kole ti ina mahala. Kota zakuriata traki imakarianaha. Kwete I soku umariata lika ina kore. Umashuku unanatea uitahaya use inirikele ki ilakata uya koriti yamanatea. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was just beautiful. And Barbara, your presentation was beautiful. Thank you again so much from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for being one of our Wish Alliance luminaries and for everything and all the contributions that you make. I also wanted to mention we have Kevin is going to be speaking with us next month. I think you've got the 5th. I believe, but I'll be sending all these announcements out. So again, if you'd like to be included, please go to wishalliance.org and sign up. So for tonight, does anyone have any other final comments? Okay, let's let this.
I do.
Yes.
I do. I just think you are such a blessing. Thank you very much for coming to Earth. Thank you for exchanging with that natal, that woman who left. And I'm sure it's serving her highest good too, to know that you are carrying on in her body and her family, to do your wonderful work. Thank you. Very blessed that you are here.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Barbara. Okay, I'm gonna cry. So before I do, let's all say good night. I'm gonna put it on gallery view. Everybody do our final waves. Good night.
Good night.
Lots of love to everyone.